Hello friends, are we ready to talk about sketch number 10? This sketch has two photos in the center-ish of the layout, and basically we've got two vertical photos. Of course, you could rotate this very easily if you had horizontal photos instead, and you could adjust the size of photos to whatever you have. I am going to be using two 4x6 photos in the layout I'm creating today. There is a band across the middle of the photos for the title, and I've made it transparent on the sketch so that you could put it on vellum or something like that in case you needed to see what's behind the photos. And then there are two border strips. One is larger than the other. And so this is the sketch that we're going to start with today. You'll notice too that the embellishment is on a diagonal. And so that's where I'm going to start. But sometimes layouts call for different kinds of things as you get going through them, which I talk through when I'm creating the videos, but sometimes maybe you feel like you need another embellishment cluster up here or something. As long as you're creating a visual triangle or a diagonal line of embellishment or a vertical or horizontal line even, then you should be good to go. So let's go ahead and get started with that and see where this one takes us. I'm going to use these two photos of my daughter and my nieces at the pool. They went to the pool together a lot lately. Or a lot together this last summer, and so I wanted to just document that. I'm going to be using some super old, these stickers kind of inspired my color scheme, and they match their swimsuits really well, but these are some old sassafras stickers, and I felt like the flags, the banners, kind of reminded me of like the banners that they have across the pool when swimmers have a race, and so that's kind of what is inspiring this layout. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use this as a background. It's hard to tell, but this is text and it's kind of in a wavy pattern, so that's also definitely inspired by the pool. And then I have some other papers that I'm not sure what I'm going to use yet, but that I'm considering for the sides when I'm done creating the center or behind the photos. So we'll see what happens. This one, we're just going to kind of go with it and see what happens. So I'm going to start by just trimming off the branding strip, and then I'm going to kind of start playing around on the background, trying to figure out how I want the photos to lay and how I want to arrange things. The photos are a little bit different from each other, but I think that I can still make them go together. Now I'm looking at the sticker sheet because that's kind of what inspired the whole layout. And so I'm going to start by peeling off one of those triangle pieces, and I'm just going to immediately go into making it into a little banner. And I'm just kind of manipulating it a little to try to figure out how to make it work. And it's easy enough because the connections between the triangles are so thin that it's really not a big deal. Now, I didn't make that top one go all the way across, and I kind of forgot about it. So now I'm looking at it wondering if in the final layout if I cover up that end or not, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm just kind of stringing those across, and like I mentioned before, it reminds me of, or maybe I didn't mention it before, but it reminds me of like when you have when someone has a swim meet, that there's those little flags hanging up, kind of that festive look. So I thought it reminded me of the pool. I thought also that that's like an offcut piece from one of the circle borders, but it looked like waves kind of. So I'm going to cut a little strip of this pattern paper this is an old one from Studio Calico. It was, at the time it came out, it was like my favorite paper ever, and I just found another piece of it. And so I am adding it here at the bottom with the little wave on top. And now I'm not going to use those circles like I thought I might, but I'm going to play around now with layering up some stuff behind the photos and what I'm going to use for embellishment. So I have these Felicity Jane little chipboard pieces, and they have that bright orangey salmon color, and I want to use those, and one of them has flip-flops on them, which you always wear flip-flops at the pool, and so I decided to use that. And I just remembered when my daughter was little, she used to call them fweep flops, which is cute. So I was thinking maybe I would use one of these large words across the photos, but they're just too big and large and in charge and taking up too much visual weight. And so I'm going to look through these other stickers that I pulled out. I really love the way that this circle looks that says love this. It matches the colors perfectly. I'm going to bring it back a few times because I really wanted to make it work, but I end up not going with it. I'm going to adhere my photos together before I adhere them to the background, just so I can kind of move them around until I decide exactly what I want to do. I like the coloring on that On a Whim piece as well, but I'm not going to go with that either. I do know I want to use the vellum. There comes that love this again. I just love it. It's so cute. I got to use it on another layout. But I decided to go with just some letter stickers, and so I am going to spell out the word pool with these white polka dot. They do have little black polka dots on them, Felicity Jane stickers at first, but then I decided against that because it just wasn't working for me. So I found these old stickers from Amy Tangerine that are words, and I'm going to use the word moments, and I like that. I like the white because it's still light and airy and lets you look at the photos. Because I was using those sassafras stickers at the top, I thought I would just go back to my sassafras letter stickers and pull some of those as well. And that kind of bright orangey color matched this pretty well, I thought. And they're sparkly. In real life, they look a little bit lighter than they do in the video. They look pretty dark, but they are a little bit lighter and match it really well. I'm pulling out those papers that I keep pulling out and trying to see if I can make them work on a layout that I created in an earlier sketch. And I'm going to use this really light colored one to back my photos with. So I'm just kind of laying the photos on top and making it go a little bit larger than the photos. And in the sketch, it does show a few layers behind the photos. And just as the sketch calls for, I'm going to use some vellum across the middle of them and put my title on top of it. So I'm just kind of holding that on there, figuring out what won't really matter if I mess it up, or if I cover it up, I mean. And then this wasn't quite straight, so I'm just laying it on my mat there to make sure it is straight, and then ripping off a little bit more of a piece. And I really like the ripped edge of the vellum, and I like when I rip it with my ruler. It gives a straight edge, but it still has that texture, and I really like it. So now I am just adhering those to the back, and I am going to put this on my layout, and I really am liking that. So at this point, I wanted to use these Illustrated Faith. They're stickers that you can use for Bible journaling, but I love these. Or maybe they're not Illustrated Faith. They might be American Crafts. I can't remember, but they are kind of like paint, little paint swatches. And I cut one in half so that I could use it, and it kind of looks like water. And so I used it at the top left and the bottom right. That's where the sketch shows for some embellishment. And so they're going to kind of be the grounding area for my embellishment. I stuck the word pool above the word moments, and I'm going to kind of curve the word moments around so that I can, because it's foam, you can manipulate it a little bit, and I just want to make it so that the word pool fits in there nicely, and you don't cover up too much of it. You can still read it, but it kind of nestles in, and so I'll just kind of play around with it a little bit until it gets to a point that I am happy with. And at this point, I'm thinking let's add some more embellishment to the right hand side. I had pulled out a whole bunch of stuff to begin with that felt kind of poolish. I knew I had some little die cut pieces that had swimsuits on them, and so I was thinking about that. I really like the way that 4 tag looks, kind of hanging from the banners, and there's 4 of them in the photos. Well, at least in the left photo there is, and 4 is also my lucky number, so I just wanted to put that on there. I also really kind of liked the flowers, but I felt like there wasn't enough to balance it on the other side, so I decided to grab this other Dear Lizzie paper. It's not from the same collection, but it has a similar look, these little flowers do, and I fussy cut a couple of these out, and I actually don't end up using them. They just don't quite work. I don't know. I wasn't feeling it. So you'll see that I am going to switch up the embellishment here, but this one kind of just gave me a little bit of, I don't know, I had a little bit of a struggle. I got the bones of the layout down great, but I struggled with the embellishing. So sometimes it all comes together so easily, and sometimes I just am too picky. But starting with a sketch allows me to not have to struggle on like where everything's going to be placed. I was just personally struggling with what I wanted to use, and so that's, you know, a different struggle. But I kind of like the flowers, I kind of don't. So I kind of go through, I have this little bin of random pieces of stuff that I was going to use on other layouts and didn't, or that are like, there's one die cut left from a package or something like that, that are just in this bin, or stuff I fussy cut from paper or die cut out. And so I am just going through that to see if there's anything that I might want to add. I also have some embellishments in here that I had pre-made, like just some little cute little embellishments made out of some circles and stuff. And so I am going to pull some of those. I'm also punching some stars out of this paper that I painted for another layout, not in this class, but just in general. And I wanted that kind of orangey color. And so I'm trying to get a few little stars from that. And it's not quite the right color, but almost. And I'm going to make it work here. I wanted to maybe put a bow on the 4. And so I tried to punch one out of this watercolor paper, but it was too thick. And so I'm going to just find another piece of pattern paper that I can make a bow out of. And then I actually remembered that I had created a bunch of bows with some scraps. And so I'll look at those as well. So I have a couple pieces at the top that I'm thinking maybe I could string across those little banners, but I don't end up doing that. I just, you'll see how it comes together. But what I'm doing now is kind of recreating that little circle from that top little circle piece. I have a bunch of circles punched and a bunch of stars and stuff. So I'm just kind of recreating that embellishment so I can have one on the top left and one on the bottom right. And if you are struggling to balance things, a good way to do it is to just use the same embellishment in your different areas that you want to add embellishment to. So again, here I'm using those 2 circles. Now the top one, there's a little bit more space, so I can have it be a little bit more weighty. And so it has an additional circle around it, and the bottom one has just the 2 circles. So they are slightly different, but very similar. And I'm going to use that little flip-flop circle, and then I'm going to add some stars in around here too. So those little tiny stars I punched, and then I had some some yellow stars already punched, and I wanted to bring a bit more yellow in. I've got yellow in the banner, but I don't really have yellow elsewhere. Oh, you know what? I completely lied, because I added another circle to that bottom embellishment. So there we go. I am switching out the star for one that is the exact same as the one on the bottom, because I figured if I was going to make the bottom one the exact same as the top one as far as size goes, I better make them exactly the same in all ways. So I switched out the star for a different one so that they could match completely. And I'm going to kind of tuck it under the S because I want it to nestle in there a little bit and not hang off too much. And then I'm going to play around a little bit with the little word strips that I have here, but pretty much this is how it's going to go. And I figure because I used the same size of circle in both areas of embellishment, adding that little 4 hanging tag at the top kind of helps weigh the top a little bit more because it has that extra space. And so I feel like it all balances out pretty nicely. I am making my, these little stars are kind of brightly colored, and the rest of the layout is kind of vintagey looking. So I am adding some old paper distress ink from Ranger to those stars, and it gives them just a little bit more of a vintage look. That's the whole point of old paper, right? Is to give it that vintage look. So at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to string the 4 across the layout, but it just doesn't look right. And so what I decide to do is just glue it down where they kind of all meet. And then I found a little bow that I had already made, and I'm adding that old paper distress ink so that it's a little less white. And I'm going to add that to these embellishments as well. Just because, like I mentioned, I'm using some older products that have more of a vintagey feel, and so I wanted to make them coordinate. And I really still think that this looks fresh, even though I'm using some older products, because I mixed it in with some newer things, and I don't know, I really like the way that it turned out. So I like the bow on top of the 4. I think it looks adorable. And then I'm also taking I added some vintage, some old paper distress ink to the word moments. And then I'm also going to add some evergreen bow to the bottom of them, so it kind of has an ombre look. So it goes from white to a light aqua color. And I think that turned out really cute. And you'll be able to see that closer in the photos. And then I am going to, let's see, I'm thinking about how I want to do my journaling. So I decided to go ahead and trim off everything off the edges, and then I added my journaling to my photo at the top just because I felt like that was the best place for it to belong. And then I'm adding some clear shimmer sparkle to the stars, and I think that just gives it a little bit more of the sparkly look. Just felt right for the pool photos to me, and so I really like the way that turned out. And I'm just adding more and more layers, and then I'm going to add the date in white on the vellum. So I'm just testing it before I do it, and I stamped it right next to the word pool. And then I'm going to add a little bit of spray mist, I want some kind of pool color just around those other paint splatters. And that's pretty much going to finish this layout. So you can see that I rotated just part of the sketch. Those side banners, not banners, those side pieces I made, and I switched them to the top and the bottom so that they would become borders on the top and the bottom instead of on the sides. And so don't forget to switch things up if you need to or if you want to, and we will see you in the next sketch. Can't wait to see what you make.